everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show. I almost forgot to put up the banner because I was clapping along with the music.
It's a catchy tune.
like,
this is a good tune.
I'm Katie, joined by Chris and John, as always. Happy Thursday, guys. Oh, so close.
Out of frame. Damn it.
This week, we're talking about how to use AI for email marketing. We're going to talk about what email marketing tactics you should be using in 2024, how to use AI for email marketing analysis and planning, and what changes in email marketing tactics to be aware of. So last week, we covered what's going on in SEO and how to use AI to enhance your SEO in 2024. So we figured we would just sort of continue down this road and tackle email marketing. Email is one of those channels that you have a lot of control over. And so there's a lot that you can do with artificial intelligence. There's some things you probably shouldn't do with artificial intelligence. And we are here today to cover as much of that as we can for what's going on right now. So Chris, where would you like to start?
Let's start with what the state of email marketing is. Here's the deal. It hasn't changed much, right? The basics of email marketing, kind of like the basics of SEO, are pretty much the same year to year. So there's the technical aspect of things, right? Making sure that you've got all your infrastructure set up and working properly. You've enabled your deliverability protocols, which we've got past episodes of the live stream if you want to catch up on those, because that, as you saw, was an entire episode unto itself. And then you have the three pillars of any direct marketing campaign, right? From, oh gosh, who was it? It was Bob Stone, 1968, right? List, offer, creative are the three pillars. Do you have the right people? Do you have the right offer to put in front of those people? Do you have the right creative? And you need to do it in that order. Have the right people, right? Because if you're sending email to the wrong people, it doesn't matter what the offer is. You need to have the right offer, and then you need to have the right creative. Now, one of the things that people do the most wrong with email marketing is they jump to the least important, which is creative, which is like, oh, we need better subject line testing. Oh, we need to A/B test our copy. Well, if you don't have the right people and you don't have anything that those people want, your creative is irrelevant, right? If you have a whole bunch of people on your list who really want steak and all you sell is apples, your creative can be wild and award-winning, and you will still not sell anything to the people who want steak.
I'm guessing that this is part of what you're going to cover, or, maybe not. You always like to surprise me with what we're going to do. I think one of the conundrums that people run into with email marketing is, the whole, if you build it, they will come. But like, how do you get people to subscribe to your newsletter? Do you have to you have to cross promote it on different channels. You have to let people know that it exists in order to find the right people. And so like that, I feel like is one of those hangups with email marketing. That's not a new problem, by the way. That's as long as email marketing has existed, people trying to figure out how to find the right subscribers to their list has also existed.
Oh yeah, that hasn't changed. That is where the people that you want to talk to, where do they hang out, and then how can you get to them in those places? That can be things like influencers. That can be things like natural search, organic search, SEO. That can be, frankly, in the beginning for most companies, buying a lot of ads, right? You're buying a lot of ads to promote list subscribership things. And if you want to get up and running relatively quickly, buying ads is the fastest way to do it, as long as you've got good targeting and you're very clear on what people want. So the number one thing that you need to do before anything else is build your ideal customer profile, which again, we've done podcast episodes and live streams on how to do that using generative AI. You absolutely positively need to do that first, because if you don't do that, then nothing else what we're going to talk about today matters. If you don't have a good ICP, once you've got that, you can even go into a generative AI system and say, like, based on this ICP, what are the probable places that my audience is going to hang out? And then look at those channels and say, okay, well, can I reach them there?
It's interesting because, we often talk about email marketing as its own thing, as its own digital marketing channel. But what I'm hearing is that email marketing is very reliant on other digital marketing channels to be successful. And so you have to have a more well-rounded marketing plan in order for email marketing to be effective. Is
Yes,
that okay?
absolutely. Absolutely. If you think about it, the customer journey, right? Awareness, consideration, evaluation, purchase, that's the buyer's journey. Uh, uh, ownership, loyalty, evangelism is the owner's journey. Email is not an awareness channel because you can't just go cold emailing people, right? In some places, it's illegal. So as a result, it has to be a consideration or evaluation, which means you've got to do something else at the awareness phase to get people to the email. Here's the other thing that people forget. Email is the alternate sale. Your email marketing is your alternate sale. And what we mean by this is that if you can't get someone to buy something from you or do something of economic value, the other option is join our newsletter so that you can retain them and then eventually hopefully sell them. Because we know LinkedIn's economic marketing institute, whatever, I can't remember what their name is, said that for the average buyer, for the average business, 98% of your audience is not buying at any given time. Only 2% is actively interested in buying. So the other 98%, you've got to have something else to, quote, sell them if they're not going to buy that day, and that is the email.
Mm-hmm. So where does generative AI fit in? So if email as a tactic hasn't really changed, where does generative AI fit into all of this?
So the place we want to start with generative AI are the 6 major use cases, right? Generation, extraction, summarization, rewriting, classification, and question answering. Those are the big 6. The generation is probably the easiest and is the one that everyone knows. So let's go ahead and pop into, I'm going to show a couple of different places where you can do this. Again, you need your ICP. If you don't have your ICP, this is not going to go well. Your
And if you want to
ICP,
catch that episode, you can find it at trustinsights.ai/YouTube. Look for our So What playlist.
exactly. Your ICP should be stored somewhere. In Google's AI Studio, I actually embed the ICP right here at the top in the system instructions. It says here it is, and this is the details for it. If we go over to ChatGPT, I built a custom GPT that has the ICP built into it. I think so. You once you've built that ICP, you want to have it available as a utility all the time, and the easiest way to do that is have it embedded in the system itself. If you're using Watson Studio, Watson X Studio, you'll embed that in your system prompt, et cetera, et cetera. So, generation rewriting are the simplest ways to go. So let's go ahead and take pull up an email here. I sent out earlier today a pitch, and this pitch read like this. Now, this is sent to from my newsletter, so I'm fairly confident in the tone of voice and things. But suppose we wanted to repurpose this pitch for Trust Insights. I would say, okay, here's my pitch. Here's an email marketing pitch I plan to send out. Please review it and make suggestions for improvements that would align it better with our ICP. Right. So again, this is basic rewriting. Where we say, do the analysis, say, hey, your email is a friendly, engaging tone, but it could work better. Your pain points aren't on target. You might want to include some job titles, some ideas for some subject lines, and so on and so forth. And so it's going to go through and rewrite this email if we want to do that against our ICP. And the critical thing to remember here is that you want your ICP to be the reaction to this thing, because we all have, as marketers, we all have an idea of what we want to say. We're the marketers. We know our company. We know our product. We know our service. We know our email newsletter. We're confident. But are we, or do we actually Are we actually writing this email to ourselves?
I think that's a really good point. And that's where I think a lot of regular newsletters struggle, because we think we're trying to reach well, and so let me take a step back. One of the things that, our good friend Ann Handley talks about is write to that one person. And I think while a lot of people try to do that, they may not realize that they're writing to themselves versus somebody in their audience. So like, no, I wrote to one person. It's like, yeah, but you wrote to yourself. So yes, technically you're not wrong. You just chose the wrong person to write to. And I think that having your ICP built in is going to be really helpful. Now, you talked about, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, you talked about generation revision. Couldn't you use this as question answering and start to ask questions of your ideal customer profile of what kind of emails do they want to get?
Absolutely. You absolutely can do that. So let's pop over to our friend ChatGPT and do that exact thing. Say, I'm about to start a new email newsletter. I need some ideas for what to write about on the topics of generative AI, analytics, data science. Based on your knowledge of the Trust Insights ICP, what kind of newsletter should I produce? Now, one thing we haven't done is we have not put in our company profile. So that's missing from here. So you'd want to have that available as well to say, like, Trust Insights is a consulting firm that does this, 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 and this. However, we have the latest trends and innovations, analytics, insights, and best practices. Again, these are things that are based off of our ICP, data-driven decision-making. So you could absolutely do that for ideas at a strategic level, at a macro level, or even at a, hey, I'm about to write this week's cold open. Here's my thoughts of what I've written. ICP, what do you think of this? What parts, if I missed that, would be more satisfying to you?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not short of ideas, that's for sure.
No, it's definitely not short of ideas. Let's take another example of that. In fact, we're going to take the text from this week's newsletter. Please validate this week's newsletter content. What about it would our ICP not like? And here is from the Almost Timely newsletter, this week's thing. It's going to go through. It's going to yell at me and say it's engaging, excellent for engaging a technically sophisticated audience. However, to ensure it aligns perfectly with your ICP, it's like you wrote an article is too technically dense. Like that's the ICP is not going to enjoy this. It's too generic. It's not focused on industry applications. You overemphasize regulatory compliance, right? No one cares.
I feel like me and ChatGPT are on the same page.
Exactly. Your call to action is too late in the piece. You're too focused on the technology and not focused on business goals and ROI. Right. So again, this is from the Almost Timely newsletter, which, to be fair, is sort of my pet project, which means that I don't particularly care. If I was to feed in an issue of the Trust Insights newsletter, we might be more concerned. Like, oh, wow, maybe we need to redo this week's newsletter if this was the same feedback.
And if you want to subscribe to said newsletter, you can find it at trustinsights.ai/newsletter, where it is more closely aligned with our ICP.
Exactly.
Just, for the record.
Another thing you can do from a generation perspective, if you're running low on ideas, if you're running low on inspiration, a lot of marketers have what you would call a swipe file, right? A list of, hey, here's things, emails, things that I thought were particularly clever, or writing that was particularly clever. You could, if you wanted to, go into ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, and actually upload your swipe file and say, here is some stuff for inspiration Take a look at the writing style or the tone of voice or neat language tricks that all these different examples used. And then here's my email. How would you gussy it up with things that I've identified as really, really well done? Taking my email and sort of rewriting it.
Can I be honest? I've heard the term swipe file before, but I never knew what it was. Did you? I'm guessing, John, you knew what a swipe file was?
Yes, I have to give a shout out to Carol, my direct mail mentor, who introduced me to that concept. Yeah, the idea is back in the day of direct mail, you'd just be getting all this stuff. And as you'd go through, you'd find stuff that's way better than the rest of the pack. And so you have a folder at your desk where you'd throw that stuff into. And then when somebody comes to you needing a campaign, you can go to this folder and, if it's a different industry, you're free to swipe all the great ideas from everybody else out there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I blame me getting into this industry later than a lot of other folks. I'd heard the term, I'd never known what a swipe file was until right this moment. I used to work with a designer who had on her calendar like appointments with herself that said tickle file, and I think it was the same kind of idea, like things that tickled her that she wanted to borrow from.
Yep, exactly. Another thing that you can do with generative AI in the rewriting vein, if you don't already use some form of email validation service, you should be, right? Email validation services are companies that where you upload your list. This is one example called Million Verifier. You upload your list, and it tells you, hey, this percentage of your list is good, this percentage of your list is bad. I think so. This is something that, for example, I do both with Trust Insights and with my own stuff. Every week I feed in the new form submissions from the website because let's face it, there's a lot of bots that like to dump a lot of crap. When you get feedback from this, you get the bad list. Very often you can take a look at that list and go, oh, well, so-and-so just misspelled the word Gmail, right? Like they typed Gmail. So one of the things you can do is to have a model evaluate the bad emails and say, fix any obvious errors, such as misspellings of common email domain names. Big warning lights. Make sure that you are using a generative AI model with full privacy practices, meaning it's one of the paid ones, that does not train on your data, that does not submit your data for human review. For example, if I pull up Gemini here within the Trust Insights workspace, you can see at the very bottom here, it says, your Trust Insights chats aren't used to train our models. Right? That is a big difference from the consumer version of Gemini. The consumer version of Gemini says at the bottom, it might display inaccurate info, but here's your privacy statement. And you go into the privacy statement, says, yeah, we're reading it. We're reading your stuff.
Right.
Email addresses are PII, personally identifying information. So if you're going to use generative AI with that data, you must use one that has privacy protections turned on to safely do it.
I also want to make mention that, sorry, John, in terms of email hygiene, we did an extensive episode on the live stream a few months back. So if you want to catch that episode, you can go to trustinsights.ai/YouTube. And again, find the So What playlist and you can find that email hygiene episode. Sorry, John, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say one thing after you have Gen AI go through that list, still make sure you run it through the service before you just directly mail that, because you want to, even if you correct it, those could still be dead emails as they're corrected. Or worse, there are email addresses out there that are honeypots. If you mail them, you end up getting yourself blacklisted, and that's a whole another set of headaches.
Can you explain what a honeypot is for those who don't know? I do know what this is, like the one thing I do know, but can you just sort of explain it, John?
Yeah. So the idea is that it comes from espionage, the world of spying, of having data out there that is wrong, so that if it ever shows up, that somebody is doing something improper. So a good trick with that would be a company in their house list will have 5 or 6 emails in there that they know are not used anywhere. So if they ever show up out in the wild, they know that somebody has breached the data and that there's some kind of problem. And so a lot of the ISPs have this set up where there's certain addresses. If you mail these addresses, you're proving that you've gotten some kind of stolen or broken list, and that will harm your reputation. So yeah, the honeypot is there to catch the flies.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right, Chris, what have you moved on to?
So this is the implementation. I have taken this CRM data. This is synthetic data. We manufactured this data. You can tell by all the company names all being like SuperTech LLP, stuff like that.
People are going to take that and be like, oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. We have EcoWare LLC. We have UltraNet LLC, and a random name generator that generates random names. And we have, of course, this is as if it was from your CRM, your annual revenue, the number of employees, the date of last contact, what company, and critically, the email address. So I have loaded in my this data set. I said, tell me, first of all, do you know what RFC 5322 is, which is the RFC for proper formatting of email addresses? This is an international standard that everyone's required to comply with. And then I say, here is the data file. Identify for me any email addresses that do not conform to this. So what you would do if you wanted to validate the bad email addresses that came out of the verifier service, you would essentially do this and start talking to the language model and say, okay, well, which ones are bad? Why are they bad? Can you fix them? And so it would go through and do that. So that's an example of using generative AI to do that list hygiene, a part of the list hygiene. You would get the export from a hygiene service and then try and fix the easy stuff, misspellings of common domain names, Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo Mail, etc. People using commas instead of periods in their email submissions.
Isn't that, just to sort of play devil's advocate, isn't that something you could do in Excel or in like a text editor?
You could. And we in fact, for Trust Insights, we have a Python script that goes through and does programmatic cleaning of the most common misspellings and things. So you can absolutely process that. This, using a generative AI, though, means in this case, you don't have to actually do the work of writing that code or the manual, because going line by line in an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay. I was just curious. It sounded to me because, if somebody handed me a spreadsheet of email addresses, and this is, Chris, where you and I differ in terms of our usage, my first thought wouldn't be generative AI. It would be to bring it into a text editor or to do some sort of like filtering or VLOOKUPs in Excel to do that work.
Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. If that's what you're comfortable with, you should 100% do that. If you're a marketer, though, and you don't know where to start, and maybe your Excel skills are not as strong as you'd like, this is not a bad option.
Well, and I feel like maybe the question is, so it's not saying, so that's assuming to put in RFC 5322. Maybe, again, sort of what you always say, don't forget about the chat version of generative AI, where it's more of interactive. You can say, hey, generative AI system, I have an email list that I need to clean up. Where do I start?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a great way to handle that. And saying like, what is the valid email address, and have it go through that. Okay.
Or maybe what happens if I don't have a good list of emails? Is that going to be harmful to my deliverability?
Exactly. Or even things like taking a screenshot of your email marketing interface to say, analyze this. Like, how is my email marketing been doing? These tools can see. All right. So next, let's go ahead and flush this out here and clear out our system prompt, because I want to start a brand new session. Sometimes you want to do summarization. Sometimes you want to understand what's happened in email so that you can maybe classify it, get some good ideas, or in many cases, learn what not to do. So let's say I'm going to start typing here. You two talk amongst yourselves. We're going to be using the form submissions from the Marketing Over Coffee email list from our website, where people send us pitches all the time. We're going to look at those. I've anonymized them. We're going to look at those and try and characterize the way people are pitching the Marketing Over Coffee podcast.
Oh, John, this has got to be your favorite game.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to get a lot of rotten pitches of people whose stories no one would ever want to hear. That's pretty much the first grab. But yeah, this will be interesting to see what comes up, because it's, there's a wide array of stuff between folks that actually have an interesting story to tell versus people just trying to sell us junk. And then some user comments in there, but it's all pretty much automated junk. I think Chris and I both got into the Cision database at some point. So now just the whole world continues to spam us on a regular basis.
I think what's interesting about those, because obviously, there are companies and agencies who are using those automated bots, is they like, this is the thing, and maybe you know this, John, is that, they're sending out hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of emails. Are they actually getting responses to these? Like, is that the idea? Is that let's use the bot to send out, 1,000 automated, unpersonalized emails. But if we get 2 people to respond, then we've made our ROI.
Yeah, that's it. You totally hit it. And this is what the number one complaint with like email and social networks is, that it ignores a lot of the rules of human communication. The fact that if you send 500,000 and you get 2 hits, well, those are 2 wins. So that's good. There's no pain for the other 499,998 people that you pissed off. So
Chief statistician right there.
That's, we're down to the decimal on that one. But yeah, so that's the thing, and yeah, it does work. That is the truth. If they get a couple hits and then they pass those on to the client, and the client's happy, then yeah, the spam is just the cost of doing business.
Okay, John, out of 64 pitches, this is like the last 60 days. 48 guest pitches, 6 sponsorship pitches, 2 collaboration pitches, 5 blatant sales pitches, and 3 bits of spam.
It sounds like a really bad version of the 12 Days of Christmas.
An exceptionally painful version. Yeah, and that's pretty good. Like a 10-to-1-ish of guests to sponsors. In fact, it's probably a little worse. Like that was actually a good day. We've had some, more than normal sponsorship pitches in the last month. But yeah, that feels dead on. There's that feels good in the gut.
So what does one do with this kind of summarization? Like, what's a use case for this, Chris?
So summarization of an inbox. Well, let's continue on this. Because what I want to do is I want to talk about scoring. So you've got this big archive of existing emails. And I start off by priming the model with the Trust Insights pair framework. And I said, okay, what are the criteria of a good pitch? And it says good pitch is relevant, has good value proposition for the audience, concise, professional, and has a call to action. So I'm now writing the follow-on. Our show, the Marketing Over Coffee podcast, is a show about marketing, technology, tech, and whatever else, and marketing news. We focus more heavily on B2B marketing in general. Use this criteria plus your own knowledge, the marketing podcast, to score the pitches. Okay, let's ask it now. Great. What do you know about the Marketing Over Coffee podcast? Let's see if we've done decent SEO over the years and content creation, and Gemini knows who we are.
It's thinking. Oh, there it is.
Nobel Prize winning Marketing Over Coffee podcast is known for.
Not bad. Not bad.
Yeah. Seems to be accurate.
Exactly. So now I can say, our show is the Marketing Over Coffee podcast. So use the knowledge you have shared to judge, score, and present the aggregated summary of pitches that meet these criteria. So we're going to have it score this. And to your point, Katie, why would you want to do something? Why would you want to assess an inbox? Part of it is to understand what is being done in the marketplace right now. It's almost like competitive intelligence to say, okay, well, suppose we wanted to pitch the In-Ear Insights podcast to other people. How do we go about doing that? What would be a pitch that we could develop? And then we'd have this corpus of these pitches. So here we have the scores. Number of pitches meeting criteria. 44 out of 64. So 68% are relevant pitches. 59% have a value proposition. Only 50% are concise. 90% are professional. 84% have call to action. So knowing this, the weak spots are relevance, value proposition, and conciseness. And if we wanted to write good pitches, those would be the criteria to lean on, because we know that what everyone else is getting in their inbox isn't.
This might be I hate to say dumb question, because there's no such thing. So wouldn't common sense tell us that our pitches should be relevant and should be concise? I guess my question is, why would one need to do this analysis to know that your pitch should have the following elements? And maybe this is where I'm just like, I get baffled by things like this.
Common sense should suggest that. However, common sense clearly is not all that common if only 50% of pitches are concise.
Fair. Okay. It's fair. Solid answer.
So this is an example of summarization, classification, and question answering. A non-email marketing use case for this that, by the way, we use all the time is taking the contents of an inbox for, say, a particular client and putting that in and then summarizing, like, here's what we did for this client over the last month. It's a way to roll up activities. It's super powerful, and also is a good way of finding things you forgot to do. So that is classification, summarization, question answering. Other things that you can use generative AI for are technical help, right? So let's flush our session here and ask, what do you know about email deliverability protocols such as SPF, DKIM, and DMARC? You'll recall from the email deliverability episode we did a while back, these are the three big protocols for doing this sort of stuff. And it turns out that the large, sophisticated language models pretty clearly know this stuff. Great. What is the correct format for an SPF DNS entry? So I'm just going to ask it these questions, kind of what you were saying earlier, Katie, the chat and chat GPT. And then if you're unclear about how to do this stuff, and maybe you don't like the output of the wizards, you want to double check, you can take those deliverability settings out of your DNS, feed it to a language model and say, hey, validate this. Check this out for me. Does this make sense? Did I do it right? Is it compliant with the standard? Right? It's a great, straightforward way to have a second opinion on your deliverability work.
With questions like this, so email marketing, you're very well versed in it, the technical side of it. If you said, what are the three email deliverability things that you just listed, I would be like, I don't know, and I would kind of like make up some letters. So because I'm not in the technical weeds all the time. Like, now that I'm seeing it, I'm like, oh yeah, now I remember, but it's not information I keep top of mind. So that the information in here is correct, but how would I know versus if I just did a Google search and said, how do I make sure my email gets through to people? Like, how do I know that this is the right information? Because we do know that generative AI can hallucinate. And so maybe instead of SPF, it says SFP. And I'm like, oh, that looks close enough.
Ask it. So I've said, let's talk about email marketing. You'll be an email marketing expert. I'm having trouble with my email marketing, getting emails delivered. I'd like you to coach me through diagnosing my delivery issues. Does that sound good? So it says, understanding the fundamentals, deliverability versus delivery. Delivery is a technical process of an email reaching a mailbox. Deliverability refers to whether it lands in the inbox rather than the spam folder. Many factors influence deliverability. Let's start investigating. Basic checks, typos, spam filter trigger words, bounce rate, spam complaints, and so on and so forth. So this can essentially start to walk you through diagnose this, and you can say, hey, I'm a non-technical person, I don't know how to do any of this stuff, so I'd like you to give me step-by-step instructions for how to check my spam complaints, for how to check my DNS. I don't know. I know we pay for WordPress. Is that it? And it would say, no, that has nothing to do with email. And say, I bought my domain name through GoDaddy. They would say, great, here's how to start finding those settings within GoDaddy, or here's some technical articles. So using the tool as a coach, as a second opinion, is a great use of it, especially if you start asking it for more articles and resources. A tool like Perplexity, for example, would be a great choice for this, because what Perplexity will do is it will find you the actual articles to read.
Mm. And I think for someone like me, well, and I feel like I'm fairly representative of a lot of marketers. I would be looking for a tool like Perplexity, because I also want to see, like, where are you pulling the information from? What are the articles? What are the videos that I can watch to walk me through this? Because that's one of the things that, at least to my knowledge, generative AI doesn't do, is it doesn't generate a video for you to watch when it says these are the instructions. A lot of people, and I'm putting you into this category, Chris, prefer learning by watching a video, whereas I prefer learning by reading a list of instructions. But you have to cater to both kinds of learning styles. And I don't believe generative AI itself creates those walkthrough videos.
Mm-hmm. No, it does not. Generative AI does not create those walkthrough videos. But in many cases, if they exist, a good AI-enabled search engine will find them and present them to you.
That makes sense.
Another one is just asking these things questions like, hey, I saw an article about this. Find me additional sources. So there was a recent piece. I forget which publication it was in, but said, hey, using emoji in your subject line increases open rates. And it turns out that there are sources that both agree with and disagree with this, and it turns out it depends on your audience. So one of the next things you would do is say, go back to your tool that has your ICP loaded in it and say, based on this research, and you might want to copy and paste some of the articles into it, and your knowledge of our ICP, should I start using emoji in our subject lines based on everything you know about the demographics and the firmographics of the people that are in your community? It might say, absolutely, you should be using emoji. In fact, you should make your entire subject line emoji. Or it might say, nope, your audience will just be turned off by this. This is not appropriate for your audience. Don't do it. But it, again, really emphasizing using that ICP will help guide these decisions.
I think that is a question that we can do offline that we absolutely should ask. So for those who aren't aware, Chris and I are constantly at odds about the use of emoji in email. I am anti-emoji. Chris is pro-emoji. And John refuses to tie break.
Well, the one thing, we spend so much time with bureaucrats, and like any company over $20 million, when they see an emoji, they're just like, oh, these crazy kids, that's risky. So, if we were selling stuff on TikTok, then yeah, emoji it up. But for our folks, our boomers, no, that's way too crazy.
Okay, so that covers the 6 major use cases of generative AI. Generation, write the email, write the subject line, et cetera, with your ICP, or using this swipe file as inspiration. Help me do this thing. Extraction, get data out of other things and do something. Oh, I forgot RFM analysis. Derp.
I was just thinking the same thing. Clearly not.
Clearly, you know what? It's okay. RFM analysis, if you're unfamiliar, is recency, frequency, monetary value. It's a classic analysis tool, particularly for retailers use it a lot, but you can use it in email marketing, and you should be using it in email marketing. So let's take a look at what an RFM data set would look like in email marketing. I have here same synthetic data set. So this is so if you're trying to be evil and you're going to copy and paste the emails I share on screen, you're in for a rough surprise. And I have 3 different metrics. I have the number of emails that address has opened. I have the number of days since they've opened the last email, and I have the deal size from our CRM. So recency, frequency, monetary value. If you have information like this, you can feed it to a tool like ChatGPT's advanced data analysis, or have your any language model generate the code necessary to perform RFM analysis. And what that will tell you is it will help you cluster your database into people who are maybe frequent openers but don't buy anything, people who have bought something but you haven't heard from them in a while, or people who just like occasionally show up. And then based on that, you would have email marketing strategies that map to each segment. So if you have people who have bought from you in the past and have a high monetary value, but have not been recent or frequent, you know that's something that you hand off to your best sales folks and say, go get them back. They bought a lot of stuff from us in the past. They probably still need us somehow. Go get them back. On the other hand, if you have folks who are like big openers, big frequent openers, but they never buy anything, those might be your evangelists. Those might be folks who they can't afford whatever it is you're selling, but they love everything that you create. Find a way to work with them as influencers and say, hey, can you help me share this newsletter? Can you help me share this email newsletter with your audience and get in front of people who can buy something, right? So that's a technique that you can use. What did I do with it? I had some Python code that I wrote earlier about this. So I had Gemini go through and start framing out an application to ingest that data set and then produce the analysis and the different clusters so that later on you can run it. So you can either do it in ChatGPT natively, which will take a long time. And if you have a lot of records, it doesn't do very well. It's like over 1,000 records. It does not do well. Or you could have the tools build you code to do it for your very large data sets. So for example, the Almost Timely newsletter is close to 300,000 subscribers. ChatGPT is like, I'm not doing this. But Python code will have no trouble with it.
Well, and I think it's worth reiterating that in order to do this kind of analysis with statistical tools or with generative AI, you have to have really good data governance and very clean data to begin with. You know, generative AI is not going to fix your data governance problem in this instance. It can give you some ideas of how to approach your data governance, but you still have to fix it. So, yes, you can use these systems to help with your analysis, but you have to have clean data to begin with.
Exactly. And good software, good email marketing software. If your email marketing software doesn't spit this data out, you've got a problem. If you don't have a good CRM, you've got a problem. This is not going to work for you. So generation, extraction, summarization, rewriting, classification, and question answering are the 6 major use case categories of generative AI. We've talked through things like building your ICP to do the generation or to do rewriting, extraction to fix bad emails, summarizing your swipe file or summarizing pitches you already get so that you get some competitive intelligence going, classifying the contents of an inbox or classifying, again, your swipe file, doing RFM analysis, validating your DNS settings to improve your email deliverability, and ultimately using that ICP with your generative AI to ask it questions like, what do you think of this? What do you think this content calendar for the next quarter? What do you think about this email, this subject, this paragraph? Use these tools as advisors, right? You can program them as to be great advisors.
And we don't have time to get into it, but I will make a quick pitch to also use the 5 Ps. Once you have your ICP, Run through the 5 Ps to figure out the purpose of creating a newsletter in the first place. Do you want it to be an awareness tool? As Chris mentioned, it can work as awareness, but it's better if it's further down the funnel. So you have to really understand, why am I doing this in the first place? Am I creating a newsletter because everybody else has one, or am I creating one because I have value to add to my ICP? So just my quick 5 Ps pitch.
Exactly. John, any final parting thoughts?
Identify yourself as Promoji or Conmoji and get the testing running.
Conmoji over here. I don't think that's a word, but I'm Conmoji.
Well, Promoji is really good. Conmoji is the best I could come with. I'm not satisfied with that. So
what about Antimoji?
Yeah, Antimoji. It just doesn't hit like Promoji.
No emoji.
No emoji.
There you go.
That's an upgrade. I'll take. That's the new champion.
Hashtag
Exactly.
no emoji.
It's got the rhyming. Promoji, no moji.
Promoji. Oh, and it rhymes too. That's
Oof.
taking
All
the
right.
win for that. I'm having a milkshake.
And with that,
thanks for tuning in, folks. We will see you next time. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast and a weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.